the guitar player that was in the band for the first year, was actually washing off his Mr. Important with a bottle of Jack Daniel.
Actually, the best thing to do is just leave it turned up all the way, all the time, on 11.
Joe Perry's path through the world of rock and roll was never the result of blind ambition or a manufactured persona. His status as one of the most respected guitarists of the 20th century comes from a unique blend of raw talent, musical intelligence, and an innate ability to draw from his influences without ever becoming trapped by them. He didn't simply replicate the sounds of his heroes. He absorbed them, dissected them, and reshaped them into something uniquely his own, an instinctive fusion of blues, rock, and the gritty, streetwise attitude that defined Aerosmith's rise to stardom. In understanding the layers that shaped Perry's sound, one must first understand the bands and players who laid the foundations for his journey. In Perry's view, the electric guitar was more than a tool for melody. It was a voice, capable of expression as nuanced as any singer. His understanding of that power was shaped early on, long before Aerosmith filled arenas with screaming fans. As he reflected on his early influences, it became clear that the pivotal figures in his development weren't just rock stars, they were teachers, guides through a musical tradition that Perry respected and ultimately expanded. Fleetwood Mac, in their earliest incarnation, were a defining influence on Perry's understanding of the blues. Specifically, it was Peter Green who caught his attention. Green's tenure as the lead guitarist and frontman for Fleetwood Mac was brief but incendiary, leaving behind a legacy that shaped generations of players. Perry was no exception. Peter Green is one of my all-time favorite guitarists, he once said. They were a great band, and that's where I got a lot of my blues education. Green's style wasn't about speed or technical complexity. It was about tone, timing, and emotional depth. His guitar lines had a voice of their own, alternating between delicate whispers and anguished wails. Tracks like Oh Well demonstrated Green's mastery of dynamics, using space as effectively as sound. That sense of restraint and subtlety found a home in Perry's playing. Aerosmith's Walk This Way, with its signature guitar riff, owes a debt to the kind of phrasing Green popularized, a rhythm that is tight but loose enough to swing, where each note seems to hang in the air before landing with purpose. Perry learned that the magic of blues-based guitar wasn't in the number of notes played, but in the weight and intention behind them. In many ways, Green's influence can be heard in the way Perry approaches solos, building tension through carefully crafted phrases before unleashing a climactic burst of sound. But Fleetwood Mac weren't the only architects of Perry's musical education. If Peter Green was a professor of subtlety, the Rolling Stones were the professors of raw, unapologetic energy. The Stones didn't just play the blues, they reinterpreted it, dragging it through the streets of London and infusing it with the kind of rebellious swagger that defined the cultural upheavals of the 1960s. Perry recognized that the Stones weren't simply musicians, they were catalysts, igniting a movement that brought the blues back into mainstream consciousness. They started the whole resurgence of the blues in the 60s, Perry explained. They kicked down the doors for bands like Fleetwood Mac, Them, and the Yardbirds, who also helped reinterpret this American music. For Perry, the Stones weren't just an influence on his sound, they were a mirror. Their journey, from scrappy blues enthusiasts to international rock icons, closely paralleled Aerosmith's own trajectory. Critics were quick to draw comparisons between the two bands, often suggesting that Aerosmith were little more than American imitators. Perry and Steven Tyler were frequently compared to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, both for their onstage chemistry and their offstage antics. The comparisons never bothered Perry, though. He understood the connection, but he also understood that Aerosmith's sound was its own beast. Where the Stones' blues had a more traditional, roots-oriented approach, Aerosmith injected theirs with a hard-edged, almost metallic sheen. The Stones' influence is particularly evident in songs like Sweet Emotion, where Perry's guitar lines weave around Tom Hamilton's bass in a way that recalls the interplay between Richards and Bill Wyman. But while the Stones leaned heavily on rhythm, Perry wasn't content to merely be a rhythm player. His solos weren't meant to sit in the background, they were meant to demand attention. This distinction is one of the reasons Aerosmith carved out their own identity, despite the comparisons. Perry's playing was always a little more aggressive, a little more volatile, reflecting not just the blues, but the frenetic energy of the American rock scene in the 1970s. As much as Perry drew from Fleetwood Mac and the Stones, there was another band that shaped his understanding of what rock music could be. The Beatles, with their unparalleled ability to blend melody, innovation, and raw power, were a cornerstone of Perry's musical upbringing.
Love me do. Well, shake it up, baby, now. Shake it up, baby. Twist and shout, twist and shout. You think you've lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. Pain, hey Jude, refrain. All right, saving up your money for a rainy day, giving all your clothes to charity. Don't want to leave it now. You know I believe it.
The Beatles just changed everything right across the board, he once said. They just had that right combination of clean-cut good looks, a cute band, but under that they had a real rock and roll thing going on. Perry wasn't drawn to their polished image, he was drawn to the grit that lay beneath it. Tracks like Day Tripper and Helter Skelter revealed a band capable of going toe-to-toe with the heaviest acts of the day, while still maintaining their melodic sensibilities. The Beatles taught Perry that rock music didn't have to be confined to a single sound or aesthetic. It could evolve, blending genres and pushing boundaries. Aerosmith's cover of Come Together is perhaps the most direct example of their influence. When the band recorded the track for the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band film, they didn't merely replicate the original, they reimagined it, infusing it with a sleazy blues rock groove that transformed it into something distinctly Aerosmith. Similarly, their rendition of I'm Down on Permanent Vacation demonstrated their ability to honour the Beatles while still injecting their own personality. Beyond these specific bands, Perry's influences extended to the broader landscape of blues and early rock pioneers. He often cited the likes of Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters as essential figures in his development, understanding that without their contributions, neither the British invasion nor Aerosmith would have existed. The blues, in its rawest form, was always at the heart of Perry's playing. Even as Aerosmith embraced more commercial sounds in the 1980s and beyond, Perry's guitar remained grounded in the traditions of the genre. His riffs and solos often carried the weight of decades of blues history, filtered through the perspective of a guitarist who had lived the highs and lows of rock stardom. What sets Perry apart, though, is not merely his ability to channel his influences, but his ability to transform them. He didn't play the blues the way Muddy Waters did, or craft riffs the way Keith Richards did. He took those ideas and made them his own, bending them to fit the context of a band that was as much about attitude as it was about music. There's a grit to Perry's playing that reflects his life experience. The years spent on the road, the battles with addiction, the fights and reconciliations with bandmates. His guitar tells stories, not in a linear fashion, but in bursts of emotion and energy. It's why his solos often feel less like performances and more like conversations, sometimes chaotic, sometimes tender, but always compelling. In a career spanning decades, Perry has weathered changing musical trends, internal band turmoil, and the relentless demands of fame. Through it all, his playing has remained a constant, a reminder of where he came from and the influences that shaped him. He may have borrowed licks from Peter Green, stage moves from Keith Richards, and melodic instincts from George Harrison, but the end result is something entirely his own. In Perry's hands, the guitar becomes more than an instrument. It becomes a storyteller, carrying with it the legacy of the past while forging its own path into the future. Ultimately, what makes Joe Perry's journey so compelling is not just the music he's created, but the way he's navigated the space between inspiration and innovation. His influences are unmistakable, but they are not limitations. They are the foundations upon which he built a career defined by risk, resilience, and relentless creativity. For every borrowed riff, there's an original twist. For every nod to the past, there's a step forward. In this balance lies the essence of Joe Perry's greatness. A guitarist who honors his roots without being confined by them, and whose sound, much like the man himself, defies easy categorization.